Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker podcast. This is the first Glorious Goodwood podcast. We are previewing day one. I am your host, George Elek, and I'm joined by Oddschecker's very own tipster, Andy Holding. It's just the two of us today, Andy, so all the pressure on you to give the listeners and the viewers some winners.
Hopefully, yeah, nice and cosy, just the two of us. Almost can see a candle in the background and a glass of wine, can't we?
That would be lovely, but it is 11:20 on Friday morning. For some people, it's a Friday. 11:20 is absolutely fine, but we should say, given constraints around the weekend and stuff, we're recording this on Friday. So we have the declarations, and we haven't got the final runners and riders, we should say, at this stage. So apologies for listening to this on Monday, and some of it's a bit dated, but we will be recording. We're recording Wednesday, Thursday, and I think Friday's previews on Monday. So that should be a little bit more up to date. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And just before we get into the racing on the first day of the Qatar Goodwood Festival, just going to point you in the direction of the Oddschecker app. Download the app now. It is the best place to find all the best prices, the best bookie offers, the best free bets, and of course tipsters such as Andy. It's the best place to find their tips every day. If you want to get on Andy's stuff before the prices start going, you need to have the Oddschecker app in the morning to read all of his musings daily, and it will be the same throughout the Goodwood Festival as well. So yeah, recording this on Friday morning just after 11 o'clock. And as it stands at the moment, we have markets for the Unibet Euro and Handicap, which is the 145. For the Vintage Stakes, which is the next race, then the Lennox, then the Goodwood Cup, and then the handicap. So the two handicaps and the Maiden, we don't have market. So the 110, Andy, there's no market for this, but just because you've, I'm sure, had a look through the card, are there any that stick out to you as just horses to keep an eye on at the moment? And if they're still in the betting come Monday, might be worth having a look at the price.
Yeah, a lot of trainers are doubly entered here, and jockeys are booked up on both horses in some instances. So we still don't know, even at this stage, who might or might not run. It has to be said, whatever happens here, Monarbit is likely to be one of the market leaders. I thought she was really impressive when she won at Ascot last time out, beating a decent fielder when a good gallop, as they often do in those straight track races at Ascot. And I've got a sneaky feeling she still could be quite well handicapped off a mark of 89. Obviously, we know the yard's in great form. Depends, of course, what draw she gets, but she's definitely on the short list. Along with those called Lady Bowthorpe, probably not one of the most leading lights here, particularly from a smaller stable such as William Jarvis, but that shouldn't put you off. I thought she ran really well last time out in the Pippalong Stakes, which of course is a Group 3, or I think it might be a listed contest actually. Pontefract last time out, run by Ramallah. Again, another good time figure, but if you go back and watch that race, you'll notice that Lady Bowthorpe raced on the outside of the pack that day, giving away a lot of ground. And as we know, that's usually one-way ticket to disaster at Pontefract, going around on the wing. So for her to keep on as well as she did and finish fourth was a creditable effort. She was a good winner early on in the season at Lingfield, and again in a strong time. And that run last time out certainly suggests that she's capable of mixing it against the big boys on a big stage. So with the William Jarvis team in good form, Arrogato, of course, have been flying the flag for the same owner in good handicaps this season, such as the Bunbury Cup. I think, with Ryan Moore booked as well, that very much seems to be a signal of intent of Lady Bowthorpe's chances come Tuesday. So if she does run and gets a good draw, I'd be half interested in her along with Monarbit.
Ryan Moore took up the ride in Newmarket back about a month or so ago in what looks on paper a disappointing run, 4.5 lengths behind Jim Palace. But Ryan Moore, after the race, said that the horse was denied a clear run. So maybe he feels like he has some unfinished business aboard Lady Bowthorpe. So Lady Bowthorpe there and Monarbit, the two getting positive mentions from Andy. Should mention again, no market at the moment, but worth keeping an eye on those two if they're still in the race come the beginning of next week. On now to the Unibet You're On handicap, and we have a special offer here. So before we get into the handicap, I should mention that the Betfair Exchange have a brilliant offer for Goodwood called the Free Bet Streak. Simply bet £20 on the race, and when it settles, you'll receive a £20 free bet. This can then be split into multiple bets, and if you win that bet, you'll receive a further free bet for the following day, and so on. So, Andy, the question I have to you here is that if I gave you a £20 free bet to punt on this race right now, what would you be going for?
Oh, goodness me. I've got a short list of 3, but if you know my colours to the mast with 1, I'll probably have to go with 5th position. I thought ran a really good race in the John Smith. The John Smith, as we all know, is one of the best, if not the best, mile and a quarter handicap of the season. The time figure's always good. And you almost need to be a group horse nowadays to win that race. And 5th position was very well backed in the build-up to the race. And unfortunately, he went and bagged a fairly modest draw. I think he was drawn something like 19 of the 20-odd runners, which isn't great with any stretch of the imagination. But to run as well as he did, to finish 3rd behind the winner, Sinjari, I think was an above-average performance. Handicap has kept him off a mark of 104. He hasn't put him up. And going back early on in the season, you'll notice he finished 3rd in that very good race at Newcastle, which has thrown up not only the Hunt Cup winner in the shape of Dark Vision, but also the silver Hunt Cup winner in the shape of Sir Busker, who, of course, then went on to run really well next time out in the Bunbury Cup over an adequate trip. So his form ties in together with lots of good handicappers this season who have gone on to be better in better company. And I think this also probably end up running in Group 3 / Group 2s further on in his career. He's very lightly raced, and he's the type of horse that will always likely to be going well in a race like this because he's got such a high cruising speed and he's used to running in strongly run races. So he would be the number 1. So that ticks that particular box. Of the others that I'd like to look at if there were slightly bigger prices, the horse that finished 5th in the John Smith, a horse called Tin and Darley, caught the eye. This will be the first time he's gone to Goodwood, whereas 5th position, the other horse I mentioned, I forgot to point out that he's already run at Goodwood as well last year, of course. So that's a feather in his cap. Tin and Darley was also drawn badly at York, but he ran on quite eye-catchingly from the back of the field. And I wouldn't totally discount Babo's Boy either. He clocked a very big number when he won at Haydock early on in the season, quickened up very smartly. The subsequent form of that race worked out really well. The likes of Harrovian Country, and there was another one in that race, Alternative Fact, have all won since. And then he went to the Old Newton Cup a few weeks ago, and he was 3rd favourite, I think, but he finished end up last but 1. But it was a very windy day that day, and he's had a horse who's had a breathing operation. As you well know, horses have had a breathing operation. The one thing that they do not want is a very windy day where that wind is being sucked down their throat. They want a nice, dry, clear, calm day when there's no wind around, where they're going to be less affected by any sort of dynamics on that front. So if it is good ground and it's a still day, like it was when he won at Haydock, he could be a big price, Babo's Boy, because everyone think that was his true running last time out, which it clearly wasn't. So those are the 3 I'd like to mention. Those are the 3 that have stood out to me. But 5th position, he's a course winner. He was 3rd in the Magnet Cup, which is always a good trial. So that he'll do for me.
So the bigger prices there, Babo's Boy for Rafe Beckett is 6-1 with Paddy Power and Betfair Sportsbook. Teen Darley, same bookies as 12-1, as well as Unibet, the sponsors of the race. But the £20 free bet, as I mentioned, with the offer, would be on 5th position, who is 8-1 pretty much across the board. So as I will just mention again, with the Betfair exchange, free bet streak, bet £20 on this race, the 145 on Tuesday, the handicap, and when it settles, win or lose, you'll receive a £20 free bet, which you can then split into multiple bets. So absolute no-brainer for those people listening who like a free bet. Get yourself on the exchange for that one. Andy will be having his on 5th position. On to the Vintage Stakes, sponsored by Verve Clico. And we have Battleground is the 11-8 favourite, ahead of Devious Company and Toisol at 6-1. Dark Lion 8-1, Military Style 9-1, King Zane 10-1, You Spirit 10-1, 12-1 bar. I think we can expect Toisol to be taking up another engagement on Saturday. So unlikely to be running here, you would think. Let's start with Battleground at the top of the market, Andy. Do you see this 11-8 as a vulnerable favourite or someone that we'd want to get on side?
Yeah, vulnerable at the prices, has to be said, George. I think 11-8 a slight overreaction. I fancied him and put him up to win the Chesham because I thought he was the right horse for the race. I thought the Chesham this year was a slightly odd race in many respects. A lot of them only had the one run, so we didn't have many sample sizes to work out what might improve from the one run to the second. And he was the one that did, because the time before on his debut, he ran a good race from a bad draw. I think he was drawn 18 of 18 at Naas, and he was keeping on quite well beyond Lucky Vega in a race which has worked out well. The step up in trip suited him, so the 7 furlongs of Goodwood will be fine. And he looks a long-term mile project, doesn't he? Or even further. Looks at an out-and-out stayer. Often those Cheshire winners are out-and-out stayers. But the form hasn't really worked out well, and the time figure was poor as well. We've had 3 horses that run out of it. They've all got beat: Marsh Law, Modern News, and Bright Devil. So I'd be very reluctant to put him up 11 to 8, suggesting he's a good bet. Obviously, he's one of the most likely winners because he's a good horse in the making. But strictly on times and what he did last time, he offers no value at all. Whereas I do think Devious Company will probably still come here slightly under the radar. He won his first 2 races in pretty dogged fashion, making all the running twice at Haydock, which is something that Richard Kingscote likes to do at that track. But then he was in more choppier waters last time out in the Group 2 at Newmarket, which he was responsible for a very strongly run Superlative. And he hung tough in there as well. I know he got beat 3 lengths in the end, but he got beat 3 lengths by a good horse called Master of the Seas, who quickened up very smartly. We'll get a chance to look at that form as well, because I fancied St. Lawrence as we speak on Friday for tomorrow's race, which I talked about in the first podcast we did for the weekend. I'm hoping he'll run well and boost the form line. So if he runs well or wins, we know that Master of the Seas race at Newmarket has got plenty of solid vibes to it. So Devious Company, he's an honest, brave horse. He's likely to be up with the speed, which is something you associate lots of Goodwood winners with, out of trouble if you like. The prices I've got in front of me at the moment, I think he's around about the 92 mark. Did you say something around that?
6 to 1 best price.
6 to 1. Wow, that's a lot bigger than what I thought he would be. Yeah, verging onto each way bet for nothing territory there, or gritty each ways, as you would like to call it, George.
Absolutely. Yeah, 6 to 1 at the moment with Betfair, Sportsbook, and Paddy Power. There's the one 11 to 8 pretty much across the board for Battleground. Any others at bigger prices? Dark Line obviously getting off the mark last time out after a couple of disappointing runs.
Yeah, I think he's a nice horse. He was 4th, wasn't he, in the Coventry Stakes, and then went to Wolverhampton and won. I think the second horse has won since. So he's definitely a good horse going forward. Also I put up as well at Newmarket the other day to win a novice race, also Youth Spirit. He comes out of a good race first time out at Yarmouth, and I like the way he won at Newmarket. His figure was quite good that day. He's a horse I think there's a nice future for, but the one who's already been there and done it at this kind of level, Group 2 level, I think has been dangerously dismissed. Put it this way, you'd rather take the 6 to 1 about him than you would Twassell at 6 to 1. Who's not going to run it? That doesn't make any sense, does it? But if you joking aside, I mean, he's obviously out of the way, and there might be 1 or 2 other non-runners here, then everywhere. That 6 to 1 with Paddy Power, I don't think that's going to last too much longer.
So 6 to 1 Devious Company. Worth pointing out that Richard King's got jocked up already, which could be a decent indication that Devious Company won't be one of those to not last to the early next week in the betting, because as with all of these races, given when we're recording, they will cut up a fair bit, and if you can be on the one that stays in there, then that's half the battle at this stage. On then to the Lennox Stakes, the Qatar Lennox Stakes. And before we went on air, Andy just mentioned to me this looks like an absolute cracker, and it does, with Space Blues just about favourite at 9 to 2 with Bet365 ahead of Limato at 5 to 1. Safe Voyage is 6 to 1. Dukes of Hazzard 7 to 1. Lancaster House 8 to 1. Bit of money coming in for Sedancelot. All Blue on oddschecker currently 8 to 1. Dream of Dreams is 8 to 1, but as short as 5 to 1 elsewhere. Pierre Lapin 10 to 1 and 12 to 1 Bar. Mark a little bit all over the shop, but some classy horses here, Andy. What takes your fancy at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, for many years, the sort of intermediate distance, as we call it, the specialist trip of 7 furlongs, has not necessarily really caught the imagination. It's the one stepping up out of like the July Cup category, the Golden Jubilee, and the milers that just don't quite get a mile end up sort of almost coming to these kind of races as an afterthought. Whereas I genuinely feel, looking at this race, we've got 4 or 5 absolute top class, world class horses that over 7 furlongs currently in training, namely Space Blues, last year's winner Sedancelot when he's on his A game, Dubai, who was really unlucky in this race last year, Limato. I mean, he's ideal distance is 7 furlongs. He's proven that year in, year out. And, you can chuck in quite a few others into the mix. So I do feel as though this race is a stellar event, and I just wish we knew the draw and who's going to go on who at the moment. I do think the Charlie Appleby team have got a very strong hand here because they've not only got Space Blues, but they've got that Dubai. And Dubai, I thought, won very well at Hayden last time. He'll be clear top of my speed figures coming into this race. I know he will because that time was off the scale. But I would hasten to add that, or I fear that William Buick will probably ride Space Blues because Space Blues beat Dubai the time before in Longchamp and confirming himself as one of the best 7 furlong horses around. So if Charlie Appleby runs 2 and Dubai, let's say, is ridden by the second string jockey and he's overlooked, I certainly wouldn't put you off back in Dubai because I said he was unlucky this race last year behind Sedan Salot, who run all right, didn't he, the other day in the July Cup behind Oxted. And that was very much almost like a warm-up for this race. I think he used that race as a stepping stone before he came here and won last year. Save Voyage. I mean, what an admirable competitor he is. 7 years old, but he's a real good, honest globetrotter for John Quinn. He finished behind Space Blues first time out at Haydock, won next time out at Epsom. I'm amazed he actually hasn't come into this race before. You'd think he's a 7 furlong specialist. He would have had his, dipped his toe in the water in this race, but they obviously have campaigned him elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, I think I've named the winner. I like to think I've named the winner. If I was going to have a bet, if I knew it was running at this very moment in time, I'd say Dubai at 14-1 is an absolute standout bet because he's already proven he can run really hard in a strongly run 7. And I think he would have won this race last year had he got a clear run. So under those circumstances, there's simply no way he can be 3 or 4 times the price than horses like Lamato and Sedan Salot, who I think he might have beaten last year.
Yeah, Dubai 14-1 is readily available with Bet365, Sky Bet, William Hill, Betfred, and Boyle Sports there for what looks like a cracking renewal of the Lennox Stakes. Should we mention just quickly Lamato, because you touched on how 7 furlongs is quite clearly his ideal trip and obviously a very popular horse, can often roll back the years, as with his performance last time out. What would you say to those who maybe will recognise Lamato listening to this and we'll fancy basically having a punt on him again this time out?
My only problem with him is he was so disappointing here last year, wasn't he? When he ran behind Soudois at the next meet, and I mistakenly thought he ran against Sedan Salot in this race last year. Of course, he didn't. He went to Goodwood at the next meeting, but he travelled really well that day and he found nothing. Just got a half a sneaky inkling he's best when he's fresh, complete, like first time out, or if he has like a month or 2 off in between his races, because he's such a fragile horse. I'm not necessarily sure that he can string back-to-back performances together like he used to in the past when he was a little bit younger. So maybe he might have just peaked first time out. But look, you'd never discount a horse with so much talent as what he's got. It wouldn't surprise me if he won, but at the same time, he wouldn't be carrying my cash to do so.
No, Dubai is the one for Andy, as I mentioned, currently at a decent price at 14-1. We'll move on now to the Goodwood Cup. And yesterday, Andy, you and I spoke about Enable's chances on Saturday. And I have a feeling we're going to have a similar conversation here where it's not a great betting heat, but it is, of course, a fantastic spectacle in itself. And Stradivarius is 2-on, 1-2 favourite with Santiago 11-4, Nayaf Road 12-1, Spanish Mission 16-1, Eagles by Day 20-1, Who Dares Wins 33s, and Yukon Glen 66s. Absolute heartbreak with just the 7 runners as it stands at the moment. So you can't even get your nasty each way betting in before the race cuts up if it does. We tried to find a chink in Stradivarius's armour before Ascot. The performance there was absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why that won't happen again?
Not really, no, because the things with Stradivarius, the setup of these races is always absolutely tailor-made for him, because the one thing he does do in all of his races, he gives himself every chance by settling. He's such a beautifully relaxed horse. He's like 6 years old, so he's been there and done it. Nothing seems to faze him. So you can ride a race on him, whereas sometimes, in those races at Royal Ascot where they're going down the hill, down into Swinley Bottom, you've got horses reefing and pulling and wasting energy. Whereas Frankie's just be able to sit back on this horse and just let him relax. And because he relaxes, he saves his ultimate turn of foot, his party trick for the back end of the race like he did when he won the Gold Cup. They went a sound gallop, as they often do. Naif Road made sure of that, and he just sat in behind him and picked him off. I actually thought that Naif Road did remarkably well to battle and to finish second on that occasion. I think he was the only horse I think I've recorded on the round track maintaining his speed levels down the straight and holding his position, because virtually every horse that led into the home straight at Ascot on the round track races over a mile and a half upwards were completely dead in the water. So I'd actually give Naif Road half a chance of maybe filling in the forecast spot here. I don't know whether Santiago will run. It'd be lovely if he did, because at least it'll give the race a little bit of an added lustre. And of course, Santiago is bidding to follow in the same hoofprints that Stradivarius did when he burst onto the scene. Don't forget, Stradivarius won the Queen's Vase over a mile 6, as it was. I think he won the first version of that race when it was a mile 6. Went on to beat Big Orange then in this very race. I think it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, obviously, because he was a 3-year-old then. And look, his Irish Derby win confirmed him as one of the best we've seen around, if not the best, over a mile and a half. So it'd be fascinating if he turns up. But if he doesn't, and we're just left with the horses we know about in this bracket, then I think Naif Road will probably lead, and he'll just keep galloping. He'll get his head down, and Stradivarius will probably just pick him off later on. But I don't think Stradivarius will be able to get or be as dominant as he was at Ascot, because I do think Ascot is a brutal track for front runners. Well, I think Goodwood, because you can get breathers into the bends, they go uphill, they go around the back of the trees, and all those little corners and little pockets on the track, you can fill the horse up when they go up to the top of the hill. You can actually get another breather into them, and then you can let them freewheel downhill. So front runners have a better chance of conserving their energy, whereas they don't at Ascot. It's just hard out, flat out, always on the collar, always having to work hard from the front. And the front runners and the deep closers always come and pick you off. So, again, it's a bet. I can't possibly advise now, because I don't think anyone's betting without Stradivarius. But my ideal scenario for a bet here would be Santiago doesn't run, and we're left with Naif Road as the bet without the favourite.
Interesting, you talking about the track, because there are some quotes from John Gosden this morning on Goodwood, the track, and how it suits Stradivarius. The great man says, Goodwood is a demanding track in that you twist left, you twist right, you go uphill and you go downhill. You've got to be quick on your feet, which he is. So I think he does enjoy Goodwood. It's not going to be a big field, and so he'll be very tactical. We will leave the race to Frankie and see how it works out. And I think that kind of plays into what Andy's been saying. Interesting, some quotes as well on Santiago, where Gosden says the challenge is that he now has to give £15 to an Irish Derby winner. £15 is a lot of weight to be giving to a very talented 3-year-old. And I think it's one of the greatest challenges of his career. Would you agree with that, Andy? If Santiago does turn up, we could be seeing, the challenge really being served up to Stradivarius.
100%, George. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I'm not a great weights and measures man, but that is a huge, huge burden, isn't it, for Stradivarius to give away to not just any old 3-year-old. We're dealing with a 3-year-old here now that we can sort of confidently say is the best in his generation. Obviously, Serpentine will have something to say about that. But he's not likely to be stepping up in trip anytime soon. Santiago probably does look the archetypal St. Leger horse, doesn't he? I think he's favourite to win the St. Leger later on in the season. But I mean, you go back to Stradivarius when he won, when he was carrying such a lightweight. Big Orange at the time, don't forget, had come off the back of a Gold Cup win. And Big Orange was I think he was about a 5-4 favourite to win that day. And he had everything before him. He got almost a similar run through to what he did at Ascot and still couldn't put away the 3-year-old. So if Stradivarius is ever going to be vulnerable, this is the race that will severely test him. If he comes through this, we can put him up there, with the absolute greats like Lemos and Ardross and all those good 2-milers before him.
Well, fingers crossed. As a spectacle, then we do see Santiago turn up, who is currently 11-4 to knock Stradivarius's crown off Stradivarius, 1-2, 2-1. So on to the last race we're going to be able to cover in full today, because the markets are up, and it is the handicap that comes after the Goodwood Cup, where it is the Qatar handicap, and we have Magic J is the 5-1 favourite. Mountain Peak next up is 6-1. Celsius 7-1 alongside Acclaim the Nation. Recon Mission 10-1. 12-1 bar. Plenty of horses left in here at the moment. We can probably assume it's going to cut up a fair bit. But Andy, at the prices at the moment, does anybody take your fancy?
Not necessarily at the prices, George, because he's been relatively well found, but I've got a lot of time for this improving Ed Vaughan horse, Magic J. I was really impressed with the way he won at Sandown. I don't often get carried away with performances nowadays, because I've seen enough racing in my life now to take it all with a pinch of salt and, just deal with it at face value. But time figure wise, he was hugely impressive when he won at Esher, and I love the way he travelled through the races. He quickened up, and to my recollection as well, Magic J did something that I haven't seen any horse do for a long, long time, and that was win racing over on that far side rail at Sandown, which has very much been the dead rail for about the last 2 or 3 years. Horses that tend to finish off their races down the middle of the track have been running over the top of the horses that have been making the running on the rail. But he quickened up on that far rail inside the final furlong and quickly put Dale up between himself and the rest. I'm pretty convinced that this horse is going to be running in Pattern Company sooner rather than later. This will probably be one of the last chances he'll get to run in a handicap. There's bound to be loads of pace on here without quoting every single horse in the race. Your Caspian Princes, the ornates of this world, they're going to go in a million. And if ever a race was teed up for a horse like Magic J, who's got a huge cruising speed, just to sit him behind him, this is it. He hasn't set foot on Goodwood, so I don't know whether he'll handle the track. That's the only slight negative I have about him. But as far as a horse's ability goes, then Magic J is right up in the top bracket here, and I'll be expecting fireworks from him at Goodwood on Tuesday.
Any concerns that he's struggled to settle in a couple of his races this year?
Absolutely, and that's the reason I'm pointing out the front runners. If you've got a horse that doesn't settle in this race, the one thing you do need is an absolute worldy gallop where settling is not an issue. Because if a horse is flat out, you just cruise without straining too hard. Where if they're slightly going just a slightly slower gallop than normal, there is that chance of them over racing. But there will not be none of that here. You've got Recon Mission in there as well. I missed him out. So you've got 3 absolute mass front runners who, they're going to be going 10 seconds flat for the first 3 furlongs. And Magic J, if he's drawn by them as well, obviously we don't know the draw, but if he's drawn in and around where all those fast horses I've said are, then he's going to get the perfect toe down to the furlong pole, and then he's got a good turn of foot. So I'm really excited by this horse. So I've marked him up as one of the next sort of wave of sprinters coming through, potentially that could get into that sort of Group 3, Group 2 category. I'm not suggesting he's up there with the likes of Batash and and Al Ali of this world just at this moment in time, because he's got to earn his stripes. But I think this time next year, when he develops as well, don't forget he's only a 4-year-old. I think we're going to see this horse moving into that kind of level soon, in the near future.
Magic J 5-1 with William Hill, Betfair Sportsbook, Paddy Power, and Unibet. Have a feeling that price might not be around when we get to 4:20 on Tuesday. I should say, 3:45 on Tuesday. But on to the last 2 races of the day. The 4:20 is a maiden, and the 4:55 is a handicap. I'm over a mile and a half. Guessing not much to say on the maiden, Andy. No markets for either of them, but any horses in either race that you just want to highlight at this early stage?
The maiden. There's a few in that have run quite well. That lovely name, Dilly Dang Dilly Dong, as after Claudio Ranieri, of course, King Power horse. I thought that ran a nice race first time out for the Hannenkamp. The Hannens horses are running really well, and Rafe Beckett's Zaffarelli as well down towards the bottom. He ran well on debut 15 days ago. Those are the 2 that I'd look at there early doors. But the last race is more right up my street. This race haunted me last year. It's going to bring back really sour memories about talking about it. But George Scott had a horse in this race called Mole Davis, who was by far and away the most unluckiest loser of the entire Glorious Goodwood Festival last year. I still have nightmares watching the rerun. And I think Hayley Turner will go to her grave wishing that she could have had a chance to ride that race again. But anyway, George has got a nice filly in the making called Auclair de Lune, who has just had the 3 starts, 5th on debut at Kempton, in a very good maiden, which threw up a very good time figure, and the race has worked out accordingly. Then went to Doncaster, was up against the Colts, was fairly easy to back. There was a couple of strongly fancied horses in there, Swift Verdict and Dream With Me, and she kicked them out of touch and clocked a very big number. And I said to George, I think you've got a good filly on your hands here. He run her against an improving colt of William Haggis's called a Star Above at Leicester the other night. and she was really unlucky. She made the running, but a star above just found a better turn of foot late on. But she got her head down, battled all the way to the line. There was only half a length between them at the finish, and there was like 5 lengths back to the rest. So she was really unlucky to bump into a horse of that nature. She's gone up from a mark of 77 to 83, thoroughly deserved in my opinion. And she ships up here off what I think is a pretty lenient mark. I don't think personally this race is a very strong race. When I knew George was going to enter this horse, we thought there was going to be some really choice 3-year-olds in there. You know, perhaps a few horses that have been maybe running in pattern or listed level. It was a 0 to 95 this, but lo and behold, the top rated horse is only rated 87. So this is a really, really weak race for the track standards for what race I thought it was going to be. I do think this Eclair de Lune is a particularly well handicapped horse. Ben Curtis is riding. He rode her to victory when he won on her at Donny. So,
what kind of price are we anticipating, do you reckon? Or hoping for, I should say.
She's going to be one of the market leaders. I don't think she'll be absolute favourite. I can't put my finger on which one will be. Maybe something like Dancing Approach, who's won its last 2. A couple of the older horses who've been plying the trade in this kind of level. Orsaf as well, of course, is a course winner for Tregonin, who finished 1 place ahead of Eau Claire de Lune at Kempton. Is another one to consider, but I'll be shocked if she's not in and around the 5-6 to 1 bracket. But if I can get anything each way on Eau Claire de Lune, then she'd be close to being one of my naps of the day on day one.
Good stuff. Good to hear. A fancy, even Andy, in a market which doesn't even exist yet. That is why we pay you the big bucks.
There you go.
Thank you very much, Andy, for joining me today. We spoke yesterday, so if you're listening to this before Saturday, Andy and I were joined by Daryl Carter to talk through the card at Ascot on Saturday with, of course, Enable running in the King George, and we covered a race at York as well. So make sure you go and find that on any podcast app or on YouTube. You can watch us there as well. We are going to say farewell, Andy, for the weekend, but we're going to be speaking again at 11 o'clock on Monday morning with Sam Turner joining us as well to talk through the next couple of days of the Qatar Goodwood Festival, or Glorious Goodwood. Please do download the oddschecker app immediately if you want to run through all of the best prices, all of the runners and riders, and all the information you need to pick your winners, including free bets and bookie offers as well. And of course, Andy's tips first thing every morning of the whole season, of the whole year, basically, and Daryl Carter's daily naps as well. You need to download the app for that. But crucially, enjoy the first day of Glorious Goodwood, always one of the greatest weeks racing in the calendar year. And please gamble responsibly.